Hello, welcome to another session of Keep the Beat with Pete. Today we're going to talk about jazz comping. We're going to build on prior segments that we've done. And here we're going to use a lesson that Joe Morello gave me years ago. It's a very intricate exercise that then can morph into practical musical applications. So we'll get into it right away, then we'll do a little bit of talking. What we're going to do is page 5, 6, and 7 of stick control. The notes are written as eighth notes, and we can convert them to triplets. So the first line is, and what we're going to do is every right that we see printed is a bass drum note, every left is a snare drum note. Of course, if you wanted to write these out, convert them to triplets in your software, that's what you would do, so you can really train your eye, and then eventually you'll memorize a lot of the configurations because it's very easy. The stickings are pretty straightforward in stick control. So line 1 would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. So I'll just demonstrate it. We're going to play jazz, standard jazz time on the ride cymbal, and we're going to play 2 and 4 on the hi-hat. Very slow tempo. So that's line 1. Line 2 is the same thing, you just flip it around, you start on the snare drum. But okay, maybe we'll go to line 3 where it starts to get a little bit more interesting. Doubles. So it's 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and convert to triplets. And then this context. And you keep the shape of the triplet. That's ear training and placement of the notes, accenting certain ones to shape it for yourself. And then paradiddle is another one, which is going to be a combination of single and double sticking. Nice and slow. So okay, so you have your paradiddles, you know, and convert it to triplets. And then in between bass drum and snare drum. Okay, so there are 72 lines. And as Joe would say, this will definitely keep you off the streets, definitely keep you busy. And it's an exercise, right? Yes. Note placement, bass drum, dynamics, snare drum. And there are some lines here like 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, where there are 3 rights or 3 lefts in a row. And with your bass drum, that could be quite, a thing. So you would definitely take them very slowly and go over these things as an exercise for control. But then what do? Well, you start thinking about how can I morph this into something practical and useful in terms of on the bandstand. So you go back to our previous section where we were playing these things hand to hand. So one of the first things you could do is combine those two segments. So remember, in the last segment, we took the same page 5, 6, and 7 stick control. We played them hand to hand. So now, you can take the two segments and start combining them. So some of the bass drums will be dropped in, and some of the hand-to-hand phrases will be dropped in, and of course you could orchestrate. So what do you do, and when do you do this? You start experimenting, and you start practicing. Nice and slow, train your ear, place that bass drum just right, and you'll be in business in terms of taking this thing a lot further. So, just checking our time here. What is the way that you start using this? Well, naturally you pick the proper tempos. This would be in the medium range tempo. It could be slow to medium. Probably when you get towards the brighter tempos, you're not going to drop in all these bass drum notes just perfectly with the snare drum. You'd start doing swinging eighth notes, which, by the way, page 5, 6, and 7 stick control, you can do the same thing, you know. You can do all that. But in this range, you're really placing your notes. So you start listening to music, you start figuring out where something like this might happen. The more elaborate lines here, even if you chop them up and cut them up, they're going to go in for your 4-bar fills, your different types of phrasing for those, you know, more creative fills that you want to do, 4-bar phrases. Some of these, though, are very nice comping just straight ahead because they have a little more space. And if you leave a bass drum note out here and you just place the snare drum notes just right, you have a whole vocabulary of comping that's not accidental, not merely random, not something that, well, that seemed to go pretty well with the song, you know, trial and error. Okay? So you have these things, you do have to match them to your musical situation. There's just no way you're just going to go out and take any book, any line, or any phrase, and I've got this, you know, line 27 down pat now, you're getting it tonight. I don't think so. So, this is a way of giving you a comping vocabulary in your back pocket. You don't have to memorize this. It's not a lot of memorization. Why? Because if you look at stick control, which most players have at some point in their lives, have the copy or they've had to work with it, the first 3 pages are, for the most part, singles and doubles. Single strokes, double strokes, paradiddles, inverted paradiddles, and so forth and so on. Singles combined with doubles, and you know, he gives you all these different combinations. Once you get the hang of what's going on here, you have all the combinations at your fingertips, and it's up to you to mix and match them and pick the ones you like to work out on the drum set. So there's not really a lot of memorization. And why is that important? Because when you're in a musical setting and the adrenaline's dumping and everything's flowing, you're really not going to, unless you're very unusual, extraordinary memory, going to play line 27 from XYZ book. Unless it's a phrase that you've, you know, incorporated into your muscle memory. For the most part, what you want to have are pet phrases, go-to moves, things that you can take out anytime you want. But you also don't want to be stale and redundant and keep playing the same, you know, a lot of jazz players. You hear that all the time. You know, you keep da-da-da-da-da-da-da. It covers a lot of bases, right? But, okay. You want to say something different? You know, that's like the same sound. So naturally, okay, I want to say things and I want to say different things, but I don't want to say the wrong things or awkward things or obnoxious things. So you want to have a wide array of things to draw from. And when do I put that bass drum in? Well, I heard a lot of people on records drop it in here. Yeah, but do you know why? Or would you like to explore why? Or would you like to say, well, now I have a system of why? That's kind of where we would be headed with this thing. Okay, so that's pretty much it. If you enjoyed this segment, then page 5, 6, and 7, stick control. You're going to convert the notes to triplets. You can play it hand to hand, if this is the very first time you're ever tuning in. Learn them hand to hand, then play them as we did in phase 1. Just a soft 4 on the floor with the bass drum. In a lot of jazz, you know, the bass drum might be absent, at least on the recordings, right? And 2 and 4 on the hi-hat. Just keep your pulse, and then you can play them hand to hand between the cymbal and the snare drum. Then, now we're saying take those right hands, keep time, and now bass drum. And you're in business. Now, then slice and dice the lines, mix and match, give yourself some ear training, and then you start figuring out, hey, what'll work where, and you've expanded your vocabulary tremendously in terms of comping. It's no longer just random or just something you think kind of fits with the music after you try several times. You're going to have things that come right out. Okay? So, if you enjoyed this segment, please hit the subscribe button, and remember, keep the beat with Pete. Thanks for tuning in.